welcome to Magefödseln podcast, the gut feeling in English. I am Teresa Valentine and I'm currently going through the different stages or roles of the drama triangle / empowerment dynamics. And today is the third one. It's the perpetrator role / the challenger role. And if you want to listen to the other two first, you can dive into that, but you can also stay here and be a bit curious about this third role, which is a really interesting role because it's so easy to blame others and be like, you're like that, and you're the perpetrator, and you're a bad person, you're criticizing, you're judging, you're mocking, you're, doing a lot of bad things. But the thing is, when we're saying that, we're kind of doing the same thing. We're pointing fingers, we're blaming, and we're judging. We are pointing outwards instead of taking accountability, because I'm very sure that most of you, including myself, isn't perfect, and that we also go into this role. The thing is, if you listen to the other podcast about the drama triangle, is you have the victim, perpetrator, and rescuer. And if you're ever and have ever been the rescuer or the victim, you have also been the perpetrator, because these three go hand in hand. It's a dynamics that we play out. So when there's a victim, there's a perpetrator and a rescuer. When there's a perpetrator, there's a victim and a rescuer. So it comes together, and one, like, we maybe start out as the perpetrator, but suddenly we're the victim, and then we're the rescuer. So we shift within even a conversation, within a minute, we shift between these three. And today I want to explain a bit what happens in the perpetrator role. The perpetrator is the person that is perceived to be attacking someone else. So it can be physical or it can be verbal. It can be written, and it can just be some gesture. It can be excluding, ignoring. It can be a lot of things. One very subtle thing that perpetrating can be is critique. In relationships, women especially, I want to point this out to you women, have a tendency to critique their partners, which is interesting because it comes as like a rescuer kind of thing, in the way that, I want you to be similar, I want you to be like this, and I want this to change for our relationship to work. So women end up nagging about the behavior of the partner. And the thing is, it makes things worse. And sometimes women nag so much that it creates physical violence. So, like, the woman starts nagging, and suddenly they create a very dangerous situation. I'm not saying this is always the case, but it's something to be very aware of, because a perpetrator can create another perpetrator. So it's very hard to say who started it. And also, instead of pointing fingers, there's so much value in looking inwards and taking accountability for our own behavior. Because what happens is, if we are a nagger, a critiquer, and we keep doing this, and we don't look at ourselves, this pattern is gonna repeat in every relationship we have. And we're gonna be like, oh, I attract all of these partners and they're all the same. Well, actually, you are creating all of these partners with your behavior. And I'm sure there's a lot of men out there who's also doing that, but it's more typical that women verbally abuse. You see that with, gossip. There's a lot of gossip among women, and that's, pointing fingers, judging, backstabbing, or like very sharp elbows, as we call it in our way. And instead of cooperating, instead of cheering on each other, instead of, thinking that there's room for both. And there's a lot of ways of being a perpetrator. It can also be not respecting someone's no. And this is a very common one, in the way that, for example, a rescuer goes out and pushes something on someone else. They want to give something. And it's like, you gotta have this. And it's like, actually, I don't want it. And what happens is when you push something on someone that don't want it, that says no, you're actually a perpetrator. You're not a hero anymore. You're a perpetrator. You're pushing someone into doing something they don't want to do. It doesn't feel good. Isn't that crazy? So you do something to be kind, but actually you're a perpetrator. And the same goes with, for example, someone asking you, can you do this? And you say, no, I don't want to do that. And the person gets really mad at you and starts kind of like yelling at you and everything. And the thing is here, they are allowed to be disappointed. They are allowed to mean that, like, wish that you would say yes. But when they start name calling you for you saying no, they are a perpetrator who's not respecting your no. It's a boundary. So when you set your boundary and you're standing in your boundary and someone's crossing it, they become a perpetrator. And you as well. When you ask someone a favor, if you ask someone to do something and they say no, and you force them to do that, you are a perpetrator. And this can go into so many things in our life. You know, do you want to go on a walk with me? And it's like, no, oh, come on, you know, do it. You know, and kind of really nagging about it, you know? It's not a good energy. And, you know, it can be small things. It can be kind of like pushing someone to do small things all the time that you don't want to do, or accepting something they don't want to accept. Perpetrating. You're taking something that they don't want to give. This goes into the wheel of consent. I'm also going to have an episode on that, which is really interesting. Yeah, if you're curious now, look into the Wheel of Consent of Betty Martin. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, so instead of being a perpetrator, instead of kind of you looking at people as if they're idiots for their behavior, instead of just kind of being like, I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm going to critique you, and I'm going to name call you, and I'm going to like say things in a very critiquing and judging way, or doing things towards people that they don't want to do, we can go into the challenger role. And the challenger is it's also kind of like a bit of a brutal force, but it's more like a challenging force of kind of like, come on, you can do it, you know? So we're kind of like catching a bit the victim, you know, someone who's not able to, and we challenge things a bit, but not in a way that we push people into doing something that they don't want to, but we dare to challenge it in a way that sometimes, you know, people can be in a pattern, and we're kind of stating a bit and putting like a needle into balloon, and kind of like and pointing out the elephant in the room in a way that is kind of like, okay, are you sure you don't want to do this? Because you're saying that you want to walk in this direction, and every time I suggest this, you say no, and you have some kind of excuse. Are you sure you're not kind of avoiding it? Are you sure you're not avoiding this conversation? Are you kind of passive aggressive right now and avoiding something between us? You know, and kind of going into, you know, maybe an underlying reason for the behavior. Maybe, you know, someone is also in a trigger, you know, and and it's a situation, and you go in with a more kind of a challenging force. It's a bit what I'm doing on the podcast lately as well. I'm challenging people. I'm challenging people out of their victim role and kind of cutting the bullshit, cutting the crap. Kind of like, let's be real. Let's just talk about the root cause of things. Let's not, going to the victimhood role. Let's not blame everyone else. Let's look at the facts. Let's look at the situation. Let's be neutral. Let's be objective. What is the situation here? Because I hear you saying this, but it's not what I'm seeing. It's very different. And for example, if you're in a party and you're really like a girl or a guy, and you come up to them and you're like, hey, do you want to dance? And you're like, no. You can challenge them a bit in a way that it's kind of like, going a bit, or not, kind of like, oh, it's a hard example actually. I think I put myself in a difficult kind of situation here, because I see how you can do it from the questionnaire or the coach, because then you can start asking questions, and it's like, okay, is something else available to you? But it's hard in the challenger, because then it's for example, if you know the person, you can challenge them and being like, okay, but I know that you want to dance, so how about we do it together, and we can kind of meet them on the same level, and we can kind of like, instead of saying, okay, I hear that you don't want to dance with me, but kind of challenge and maybe into like a small dance, maybe making a joke and doing something little, and kind of just being like a challenging person a bit outside their comfort zone. And maybe, in certain situations, like we can go into the coach and it's like, okay, so you don't want to dance. Is anything else available, like on a lower level? Maybe it is. Maybe they want to have a drink. Maybe they want to go out for a walk. Maybe they want to talk about something specific, but they don't want to dance. Or maybe there's some reason why they're not ready for dancing, or maybe they don't want to dance with you. It might be you, but many times it's not actually you. It's something else. So then, you can be like, okay, I hear you say you're not so comfortable dancing with someone, but in what way can I be that person that you do that with? Like, to what extent can I meet you on a level where you would be comfortable dancing? Can we just like dance a bit like this? Can we do something silly, And this is where we challenge, because very often when we say no, this is also when we go into consent, people say no to your question, but it might not be no to you. So the challenge here is to kind of be like, okay, what are you saying no to? Am I asking too much here? So challenging the person to be honest, for example, to be like, okay, do you don't want to hang out with me at all? Is it me, or is it something else? And again, this is more the coach kind of, because you're asking question, but you're also in a challenging energy, because you're not giving up. Do you get it? Because we can leave it, and of course we shouldn't, push ourselves on people, and we shouldn't kind of be perpetrating and going too far. However, so many times we miss out on opportunities because we hear a no, and we think that it's no to all of us, instead of digging into and challenging first ourselves to be like, okay, I was rejected. How about I figure out what they rejected in me? So we challenge ourselves first into like, okay, what kind of questions can I ask? And then we challenge them into figuring out, are they rejecting all of us, or is it more? So what often happens in these dynamics instead is that many people would get really offended or really hurt. So some people feel shame, and then they end up being perpetrators, and they send like nasty comments that and they kind of start pointing fingers like, oh, you bitch, and these kind of things, and oh, you're so rude, and like, I was just asking for a drink or a dance, and and then suddenly they're a victim role, and it's not very charming, and it's the pride. It really nice on the pride. But when we manage to stand in our own confidence and be the creators of our life, you know, look at the episode of The Creator, and we go into the coach and we start asking questions, and then we challenge ourselves and the other person, then suddenly there might be a room for a connection. And maybe the other person also impressed by us because it's like, wow, what kind of skills do you have? It's really cool. You're really going out of your way to figure out if we have something in common, and if there's any like room in, and just like you doing that and being curious about the other person might make them interested in you, because it's very attractive actually, because it shows that you have confidence in yourself enough to be curious about the other person. Yeah, and you know, now I was talking about an example in a bar, in a dating situation, but we can also bring this into corporate life, and we can, yeah, politics and relationships and families, bringing this kind of challenger of, okay, you're saying no to this, but is there anything else you could be open for trying or looking into? Is there any other kind of opening here? So challenging the situation, instead of, you know, critiquing and coming with some feedback straight back. Often the perpetrator is hurt. I see myself when I go into the perpetrator. It often happens when I'm tired and I don't have a lot of energy, and suddenly I realize, because I'm on a path where I'm setting boundaries, and then suddenly I end up kind of being very honest about my boundaries, which is good. And it becomes important for me to communicate them, and kind of like, I'm here, this is my boundary at the moment, this is my energy level, this is what I can give, but I can't give more. For example, in a situation where I need to give something. But where I fail when I'm especially tired is that I become very defensive. It becomes really important to me, and I send it out in a very aggressive way, in a kind of like push, kind of like back off kind of energy, like, this is my boundary. And people that know me, and like, they have realized by now that I do that, and I also say to them, like, I'm practicing setting boundaries, I'm doing it in my best way, it's uncomfortable for me, and when I do that, I do it in a kind of like defensive way, and when I'm defensive, I end up being a bit like pushback, you know. And it is very much, you know, this childish energy. I've become like a little child because I haven't done this a lot in my life. And that definitely creates, you know, sometimes the other person goes into victim and they become really scared of me and they want to back out. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm practicing. But even though I'm practicing, you know, some people are really stuck then in a victimhood role, and they're just terrified of me, and they're like, oh, poor me, and they don't want to talk to me for a day. And I'm like, oh, damn it, you know? And this can happen. And that's why it's so important when we communicate to be aware of our own impact. Because now I can say, I stand clear with what I was communicating it, and I take full accountability of how I communicated it. And the how I communicated it, I totally understand that triggered you. I was just not in a good place, and this was the only way that it was capable for me in this situation. It's an explanation, but it's not an excuse. So this is something I gotta take accountability for and practice on, because it's gonna repeat itself. And I see in my past as well, it's something that I've been doing, and I've been pushing people away in times where I'm quite exhausted and I actually need help. And what I'm actually asking for is help, but because I'm so uncomfortable, because I used to be a rescuer asking for help, when I need help, I do it in an aggressive way, and I become the perpetrator. Because I have so much pride in being capable of, you know, being confident and independent and a strong woman and blah, blah, blah. And then asking for help brings out the beast in me, you know? Isn't that ironic? I think this is very common, you know, especially in women who have a lot of power. you know, everyone has a lot of power, but understand me right, but maybe like masculine energy, who creates a lot, who's in leadership positions and these kind of things, and men, especially men in the same positions, I think it's very common. So it's this kind of fear of vulnerability, it's fear of asking for help, and I think this is where the perpetrator role comes in a lot. And I think, yeah, perpetrator roles look very different in different people. I think the typical perpetrators are people that can feel a bit kind of like back off energy and with a lot of power, and they can scare people in general. But you also have perpetrators that are, you know, more subtle, who's, you know, I'm so sweet and kind, and I'm a good person, and I'm a religious person, and I don't do any harm of anyone. And then, you know, in a relationship, they're constantly nagging on their partner who's not good enough, who's never doing enough, who's not like religious enough, and but, you know, they're a perpetrator. So the people that are a lot in this kind of goody energy, they are passive aggressive, and they're also in this perpetrator role, just with a very different energy and this very manipulative way. And they're like, no, but I'm a good person. You gotta understand, I'm not a good person. I wouldn't hurt anyone. I'm so good. And it's like, no, you're not. You're a bitch, you know? So it's, you know, we really gotta take accountability for ourselves, no matter how nice we are. Because niceness in many situations isn't nice at all. It's lying, it's bullshit, and it's very manipulative. I don't mean manipulative. So it's, we gotta kind of, yeah, we gotta see ourselves and take accountability, because it's so easy to point at these people that are, you know, Donald Trump, for example. It's very easy to point at someone like that and say he's a perpetrator. But then he plays out the whole, you know, roles in a very extreme way. And I think that's kind of perfect, because he's really showing what people are doing in society, because he is a symptom of our society in our time. The fact that he was elected shows the state of the American society. So we kind of have to take accountability for this happening, and how we create this in our own environment, and how we can break out of it. We can, of course, talk about Donald Trump. We can talk about Putin. We can talk about Israel. We can talk about Palestine. We can talk about Ukraine. We can talk about, you know, these big conflicts and these leaders creating a lot of bad things. But the thing is, these dynamics that are playing out on a big scale is playing out on small scales every day, in every relationship that we're having, in most conversations we have. Sometimes, you know, we are very friendly amongst us, but we're talking really badly about everyone else. So we are kind of like enjoying talking about everyone else. So maybe you're the victim of something that happened in your neighborhood. I'm listening to you, so I'm rescuing you, and kind of like, oh, poor thing. And then all the others are the perpetrators. And then I'm talking about all of the bad people at my work. I'm the victim, you're the rescuer, and everyone else is the perpetrators. We are so good people. We're just angels in the sky. Yes, we are so amazing. No, we're bitches. We're bitches. Just like them. And I can imagine a lot of people have already been like, I don't want to listen to this bitch. Yeah, well, so be it. I don't care. Because we really gotta start waking up. We gotta start taking accountability for our own crap. I'm so tired of people pointing fingers and thinking that they're so amazing, putting themselves and others on pedestals, looking down at people and not looking at themselves at all. Not taking accountability for their own behavior, and kind of like, oh, poor me, nobody will help me, this isn't possible, the system, you know, is this and this, and they are that and that. And it's like, well, what are you doing? What are you spending your time, your money, your energy, and your resources into every moment of the day? Are you taking accountability, or are you just sitting there blaming everyone else, shaming everyone else, gossiping about people, looking at TV shows about gossip? Okay, it's okay. You know, a lot of TV shows, actually, it helps us to feel because we're so numb. But we love it, you know? People look at reality shows as never before. We love the drama. Why? You know, it's ingrained in us. You know, there's something about the community feeling that, you know, it's very innate in humans to gossip. But the thing is, Brené Brown explains this very well, that we think that we connect to people through gossiping and talking about a common negative dominate. I don't manage to talk today. Something that we have in common that is negative. Someone we don't like, the weather, you know, these kind of things. But that's actually not creating belonging. So we're trying to fit in, and we're trying to create connections based on this. But it's not a true connection. We're just gossiping about things together. We don't know each other. We don't talk about anything vulnerable. We're just talking shit. Is that the kind of friends you want? Is that the kind of connection you want? It's not a connection. A connection is talking about real stuff. It's about talking about your life, your feelings, your experiences, your goals, your path towards the goals, your ups and your downs. It's about being real about life, here and now. Life how it's been, life where it's going. It's not about talking about gossip and everyone else failing. Like, how about you turning into, like, talking about the people that are creating something, people that are inspired, you know, creating some kind of value into your own life, getting out of the victimhood role. Stop complaining. You can continue this. I seriously, I'm not interested in hearing all of the stories. But you can continue doing that. You can continue living that life. But does it make you happy? Like, really? Is it making you happy? Is this kind of life you want? Or are you seeking something else? I think most people are seeking something else. I think we're just very distracted. Numb. Not knowing how to live our own lives. So, I brought out my whip. Let's whip it out of you! I also brought my teddy. I was gonna whip him, but I actually don't want to. He's so happy. Like, I actually have him on my bed. Just look at his little legs. I'm 37, but look at him. Like, isn't he the happiest teddy bear you have ever seen? He's so cute. So I'm not gonna whip him. I also brought like feathers, so I can feather him a bit. I think this is like, no, it's not a rescuer. It's like, I think he asked for this. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Yeah, I don't have time to have a pet. My life isn't stable enough for that. So I have a teddy bear. Yeah. So that's a bit about the challenger and the perpetrator, about the drama triangle and the empowerment dynamics. I'm gonna dig into the aspects of this and how it goes into big corporations, how it goes into leadership, how it goes into politics and bigger aspects, family dynamics. It's very big. As you probably understood by now, it can have a huge impact on our lives. If you want to dig into this, if you want to hear how this impacts your life, if you want some clarity and help, like, digging into your own life and your own patterns in private or corporate life. If you're a manager as well, I have a lot of management experience. I've been a manager on a head level before, working on sustainability and operations management and process development. So I can help you on that. I'm a coach, and I also facilitate. I also do talks on these topics, but if not, definitely dig into it. I don't know if there's other coaches, probably someone who digs into exactly this, but definitely having a coach in your life can be really helpful into breaking some of these patterns and digging into your life and looking at how you go into this to create more like a focused life where you prioritize the things that you actually want to prioritize. Yeah. And if you find a coach, try and find a coach that doesn't go into the rescuer mode, because most coaches and therapists do. Not saying that all of them are bad, but just knowing that some will kind of put you a bit in a victimhood role, and yeah, just ensure that they don't enable you. Then maybe you want to switch. You can easily feel that energy. Someone who empowers you will give you exercises and will ask you questions. They won't tell you things. And yeah, you will kind of feel strong in the session. If you go to someone and you feel that they look down on you, it's not a good thing. If they look you into their eyes, if it's not like a therapist patient kind of energy, but like, hey, I see you, you're powerful, let's get this shit, you know. That's what you want. At least what I want. Unless you of course want to be in the victimhood role and continue that, then okay, you do you. Okay, we've been digging into this. I'm looking forward to the continuation. You can find me through my links in the description. You can also find my webpage, but also my link to my YouTube channel and my podcast, where there's a lot more content, especially on my podcast, which is both in Norwegian and English. I've been doing this for 4 years, so there's a lot of content. Yeah. It's been great. I've been talking with myself, so of course it's been great. Oh. All right. Have a good day. Bye bye.